So I've got a couple of FOs, a couple of whips, but mostly I'm doing a lot of playing with color. It's going to be a bit of a journey. So, I mean, like, I understand color theory, the color wheel, all of these things. It's information that I have. But I don't fully understand it. And when you don't understand something, it's very hard to explain it. So I've got a FO that sort of illustrates what I'm talking about. I've got a pair of socks, scrappy socks, the sprocket pattern by Pip and Pin, and these socks are very different, right? The vibe is different, but the colors are exactly the same. And I don't understand why. I know that it's true, but why does one feel like spring and one feel like autumn? Is it just because of the toe? Is it because of that dark pop versus that light pop? Why are the colors behaving differently even though they're all the same colors? And yes, they're next to different colors, which certainly changes things. And so that's what I'm kind of trying to figure out, is can I understand color a little better? I do that by messing around. I make ridiculous socks that actually I'm very excited to wear. And okay, what happens if I do this? And what happens if I do this? And basically everything that I'm doing right now is some variation on trying to figure out how color works beyond the intellectual stuff that you can learn. So these are my scrappy socks, Pip and Pin, in a variety of yarns. The goal here, I'm doing something completely crazy. Like, completely crazy. And I have no idea if it's going to work. If it does work, I'm going to be very excited because it's bonkers in that good way. And I'm going to talk to you about the inspiration. I'm not going to show it to you yet. So if you're sticking around just to see me doing something nuts, that's going to be next time. But it could work. It could be a total failure. It could work. I don't know until I do it. I'm going to show it to you either way, just not today. So, other colorful things. Actually, I'm going to tell you a Goodwill story first, because I was in Goodwill. It was actually last year. And I ran across a hand-knit sweater that somebody had made out of malabrigo rasta. And I felt so hugely bad for this person because they did a beautiful job. Like they did a seamed sweater, and they did a really good job. Like, seaming is not, I don't find it easy. So this person was probably either a beginner or well, I'll get to why I think that in a minute, but I think they were probably a beginner-ish knitter. And they did a really good job, and the tension was really nice. It was a pretty sweater. But they had used the standard knit bind off, just, knit one, pass it over, on the neckline, and the neckline was really small to begin with, and they used it on the neckline, and I bet you so much money that they just couldn't fit their head in, which makes me feel really guilty. But they gave it up, so I bought it for $1. I never would have bought this yarn otherwise. It's bulky weight yarn. I don't live in a Nordic country. I don't have a lot of use for something that's that heavy. So I decided to rip it out, and here is the fabric that it became. And pardon, there's still an end here because I was still messing around with the seaming. I made one of those cocoon coats. I don't think I'm going to be able to get this into frame, but basically it's a giant rectangle with ribbing at the top and bottom that you then seam up to form an armhole. And it's a shrug. It's something you would throw on. It's kind of like a wearable scarf. That's how I'm feeling about this cocoon situation. Also, where the heck is oh, there. See, it's like it's really far away. So it's basically, it's if you're cold in the winter, this would be a nice thing to throw on. That's going to give you, it's really freaking warm. But not like I still have arms. I still have obviously movement, because I feel like when you have garment like yarn weights this bulky, you don't always get movement in places you'd want it. And I can throw a thing on it and wander outside and be really quite warm. So will I actually wear it is an interesting question. For $1, I couldn't not do this. And the colors, they really are pretty. They really are pretty. I don't hate the colors. This is a, I just was messing around. There's no pattern. And what I did was I took a piece of yarn and I ran it this loop, sort of what I knew would be the circumference sort of situation. And then split that in half, since it's it's seamed, right? So to get, because it doesn't, I can't show you, because if I stand up, I'll try to take some video. If I do, you'll see that it hits me sort of just at my hips in the back, which is a nice place. It's very flattering in that sort of scoopy situation, while still being warm and cozy and cuddly. And I just sort of measured that, divided that number in half, made a rectangle that wide, knit ribbing, knit stockinette, knit some more ribbing, seamed that together. There are cocoon patterns. If I can find one, I'll throw one in the description box for you. It's a very simple construction. There are a million ways to do it. You can do it the other way. You can do it however you want. It's a giant rectangle, but it gives a nice poofy thing that I like. So the look, but then it's nipped in at the waist because of that ribbing at the bottom, right? It's nipped in at the waist, which is always a nice thing, right? It's good to have a waist, especially when you have a giant, like your arms are part of your body. So, but it's a look I like, and I'm really happy that I did this. I'm not going to keep it on though, but I'm happy that I did it. I don't know that I can figure out how to take this off gracefully, so that'll be another skill to learn. But a nice little cocoon wrap to keep me warm this winter. And that was partly why I was thinking about color, was because of that, because the colors really are divine, but it does read more as a single. If you're 100 feet away from me, you're not going to be like, oh, look at the colors on that girl. But there is a color thing going on, and they really do understand color. They are the maestros, right? They're spectacular. And look at this. Just look at the fabric. Look at the colors in this. It's even beautiful on the pearl side. It's arguably more beautiful because that's interesting. Look at how different the colors appear on this side of the fabric versus this side of the fabric. Does anyone understand these things? I don't. Anything that you understand about color, please do pop it in the description box for the rest of us to learn from, because I can't be the only one who loves color in some ways, but in other ways just doesn't understand it enough to really play with it properly. Slightly off the color variation, some of you might remember that I had that ridiculous speckled yarn, this one, that I made a pair of 3x1 rib socks out of because I was just completely flummoxed by it. And then I realized at some point that colorwork is the best thing to do with yarn that is beautiful, but, you know, so I've cast on, and I've completely forgot to write down the name of the pattern, so it'll be on the screen. And this is a free pattern on Ravelry. This incredibly beautiful pair of colourwork socks that I'm completely in love with. I'm really happy that charcoal is just Patton's Croy. It's a little bit thicker. It's almost like a sport weight, I think. It's a pretty thick yarn. And I feel like it's got to be woolen spun, or at least semi-woolen spun. Anyway, what am I talking about? I'm talking about colors, which there's an argument to be made that if you're holding, if you do color dominance, which you have to, it's physics, you can't not do color dominance. If you hold, obviously, this is your dominant, your speckly, pretty one that's slightly thinner, because the loops are a little bit bigger, but the charcoal is a little bit bigger, so the loops are a little bit bigger, that it kind of evens out. I don't know if that's true. I don't care. I don't know why I'm saying these things, because I don't care. I think it's pretty. I think it's really pretty. But it's going to be slow going because it's a different pattern on the front and the back. And the curly cues, these little sort of things, are messing with my head because I can't always guess where, what, do you know, like, with a lot of color work, you can be like, oh, okay, this is going to be next, when you have like diamonds and X's and O's and these things. You don't need to look at the chart. You know where the stitches are going to have to go to make that shape. With the curly cues, I have to look at the chart. So it makes these slower. So they'll get done eventually, and I'll be very happy. They don't help me understand color better, but they remind me of the things that you can do with color that are the best thing to do, especially if you have yarn that just isn't doing anything cool. It looks like a stained glass to me, and that's a cool look. If you don't watch the It's a Sarah podcast, you really ought to. She's a charming woman from the Netherlands. She's adorable. She's just adorable. Adorable is the word. And she does a lot of beautiful color work. She is more in my palette typically, but she makes bonkers wonderful blankets sometimes. And she made a crochet granny square blanket where the diamonds were, if this is your blanket, the diamonds were going this way instead of squares and squares. It was a diamond situation. And I was like, if that's the granny square blanket I want in my house. So I started doing that, which is a really interesting way to play with color as well. So I have got some granny squares going. And I don't really like to crochet. I find it a little repetitive, but not in, like, knitting is repetitive, but it's in an interesting way. Crochet is repetitive to me in a slightly annoying way. But I want the product, so I'll do it. But when I'm doing, this is a 20 color, one color a round or row or whatever you call them in crochet, and it's 20. I really am doing exactly the same as It Is a Sarah did, just with totally different colors. And by the time I get sort of out here, it just feels like it just feels like forever, and I get really annoyed. So I have a couple on the go, so I have some size options. If I want a quick fix and I have a good color idea, I go to little one. But what's most interesting to me, and again, I don't have much of a yarn stash. And so I don't have 62 million colors to play with. So again, I'm sort of like looking at how changing placements of colors, changing like neighboring colors, gives a completely different vibe. And I feel like this square is a totally different vibe than this square. There's something bolder about this one. There's something, I prefer this one. Ooh, that's the wrong side, sorry. I prefer this one. Is that even in frame? I prefer this one. But this one is a lot of the same colors, just in different places. Is it because there's sort of a really thick neutral thing? I don't know. I don't know why these read so differently when there's a lot of the same yarns in there. So it's a process. It's a process that is going to take me probably years of messing around, and I'll just get a little bit more understanding, or I'll misunderstand and run with that. I don't have an answer, you know, I just have a quest. But it's kind of a fun quest, and it's a quest that results in a blanket. The one thing I did buy a couple of yarns to supplement. And I'll actually show you on the sock, because I put them in there too. I got a couple of colors of just Cascade 220 Superwash. It is not a nylon, so I did not put it, I mean, up here I'm not worried about wear. it will look grubbier faster. I think I'll probably survive. So I got a couple of colors of Cascade 220 in colors that I wanted to brighten up the blanket with. I did a dumb thing because if you saw my short, you'll have seen this already, because KnitPro, which is Knitter's Pride in the US, makes yarn now. And this is, and we know I don't really love superwash, but there's a halo on this that is really beautiful. The colors are so deep and saturated in a way that makes me really happy. And it doesn't have that marshmallowy feel, that plasticky feel that sometimes superwash can have. So I'm guessing this might be more of like an easy wash treatment. It doesn't say. It doesn't give any specifics about that. It just says superwash. But I would guess that this is more of that, the easy care. There's still, it hasn't covered the entirety of the hair shaft in plastic. I think there's something else going on. That being said, despite the fact that this is a 75-25, 75-25, I would not use this for socks. I mean, merino for socks is kind of a bad idea in general, but we do it anyway. This is more loosely spun than I think that I personally, even no matter how dense this gauge is, I feel like it's not gonna, will this make a really spectacular shawl or an addition to a granny square blanket? Yes. But of course, now that I have this one skein, I'm wondering if I should actually join the ranunculus crew. Because I understand you can make a ranunculus out of a skein, and I'm kind of tempted. I'm kind of tempted to make a garment out of this. It's probably a really bad idea. I should probably just give it to the blanket it was intended for. Give me a darker, moodier blanket, but I don't know. We'll see. So I got this for that, and I also got the yarn that I kind of want to take a minute on, because this stuff is interesting but weird. This is Cascade Yarns Refine, which is 100% recycled yarn. 75% superwash merino, 20% nylon, 5% viscose, which I keep calling linen but isn't as viscose, which is kind of like linen but not. The color on this particular one is, this is why I bought it, is because of this color. I like the modeled stuff. But we're gonna wait for the dog, hang on. If you put this into my hands with my eyes closed, I would swear that this was a majority cotton blend yarn. That's what the hand is on this. It feels like, say, 60-40 cotton wool, which is nuts. I'm assuming it's a recycling thing, and they probably did like the recard, and that, I wonder, I wonder if they like recarded like already spun superwash wool, as opposed to making the yarn and then superwashing it. I wonder if the yarn it was recycled as superwash merino, and then so it was already superwash, and then they, I don't know, recarded it, or however. I don't know. I don't know how they're doing this. I haven't looked into how they're doing this. Worth noting, I paid $8 and change for this skein of 503 yards for 100 grams. And it is a pretty standard fingering weight. It's not a light fingering. I would call this a standard fingering weight, which is a nice price point on a yarn. But it is a little bit unusual. I don't hate it. It's just confusing. And you know when something is sort of, you expect one thing. When I hear superwash merino, I have certain expectations. And when things defy the expectations, I either get excited or confused. So this one has confused me. I have a swatch. Let me see if I can find it. I had a swatch that I appear to have lost. It was blocked. Basically, the fabric it's less drapey than you would expect of a superwash merino. It's a little more structured. It almost is structured if you've ever used something like, what is that, Valley Tweed. It reminds me of Valley Tweed and its sort of structure and drape. It's drapier than a woolen spun would usually be, but it's not nearly as drapey as you would expect a superwash merino to be. I mean, it's not. I'll do these two. One is a raspberry color, and one is that interesting sort of non-color color. For what it's worth, from this little swatch, which is not the swatch. And the colors, somewhat disappointingly, the colors on the raspberry, which does look like it has a lot of sort of interesting colors going on, they're not quite differentiated enough so that when you have a swatch of it, it really does read a plain, sort of bland color, which is funny considering it's a sort of raspberry. I don't know. It's interesting. The price point is wonderful. I'm definitely not saying don't use this yarn. I'm saying don't expect superwash merino when you get this yarn. Expect something unusual and you will be really excited. I have another yarn to show you in aid of my bonkers project, which again I'm going to talk about last. But when I had ordered the Rauma, I ordered it from Sweden, and I also picked up some Ullcentrum because Gotland. And I hear a couple of podcasters I watch whose names are completely escaping me, so I'm going to link it in the description. They seem to love Gotland yarn. It's a Swedish wool, Gotland sheep, I guess, are Swedish sheep. So, and it's a really interesting yarn. I was very excited to get it. They were lovely to deal with, Ullcentrum, and the yarn. So visually, it's beautiful. It's the Gotland is a gray, and it's over dyed with colors, which makes them very much colors that I love. These sort of rich colors. Right? When you dye something over white, it's a poppier color. It's a purer color. When you dye something over gray, you get these wonderful sort of heathered, slightly more tempered colors that are totally my jam. So this color is spectacular. I almost wish I could have worked it with the Rauma because two of them together were really, really beautiful. I happen to have this handy. So, I mean, can you imagine color work with that? Like, ooh, yes, just yes, 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 yes. And they're texturally different but similar enough that it would work. So I swatched this, and so it is a rustic yarn. It is a hairy yarn. Is that a weird thing to say? There's some similarity here with the Norwegian sheep, or sorry, with the Icelandic sheep, and probably the Norwegian pelt wool too, actually, but I haven't used that yet, so I don't know. Here is a little sort of semi-mini swatch. This is blocked, and it fills out beautifully. So you can see it is sort of like you would see with a Shetland if you were doing color work and you had a bunch of like Marie Wallen or Jamieson and Smith lying around. There's overlap there. It puffs out. It doesn't bloom. I don't think my gauge changed, but it fills itself out really beautifully. There's more drape than I would expect from a rustic yarn. It's probably because it's a 2-ply. This is a 2-ply, so that could have something to do with it because there is a nice amount of drape in this. I would wear this next to my skin. You might not, but it's not something that would definitely, into the outerwear category. It does make me want to knit with Gotland more, so I'm very curious, especially an undyed Gotland or an all-over color vest in Gotland. I could probably live with that. Although I really want to do an all-over colorwork vest in wool stock. Well, Woolfolk and Woolstock, one of them is a yarn, one of them is a yarn company, and I can never remember which is which. See, hairy, little hairy, which I imagine is one of those things that over time would stop, but kind of like mohair, you have to go through the phase, right? I am using this in a project that makes no sense. So I am playing with textures as well as color in my in my crazy will this work thing, which I think I can talk to you about now, because I think that's that's all I got otherwise. So look, I don't know if it's going to work. This could be my worst idea ever, or it could be my best idea ever. And we know that I don't mind frogging. We know that I don't mind saying, okay, that didn't work. Let's rip it all out and make something totally different. So, because this is nuts. So my inspiration was somebody had done a nordiska in hand spun. In primarily hand spun. So the body, if you're not familiar, Caitlin Hutton's nordiska is the majority stockinette, and then colorwork at the waist and sort of the arms. And somebody had done it in a hand spun, and hand spun often gives you that sort of tonal variation. Not always, but a lot of sort of when you're using multiple fibers or colors or what have you. I don't know anything about spinning. Don't listen to what I'm saying. But you've seen a hand spun, and often hand spun will have sort of a color play situation that turns into a sort of a stripey situation, unless you mess around with it. And there was something about it, like the Nordiska I like, it's been in my favorites for a while, but there was something about this that it sort of edged over into madness, but in a good way. Like, sometimes there's a lot going on and it's too much and your eye doesn't know what to do, and sometimes there's a lot going on and it just sort of, yes. This could just be me, I don't know, but there's something in the balance of it that just totally works. And this woman's hand-spun Nordiska is breathtaking to me. I love it. And there's something about it that just really, really, really works. So that was part of my inspiration. Another part of my inspiration is, if you are familiar with Melanated Boho Bay, who is an artist and a farmer, would be how I would say it. She does make yarn. She does make art bats and really interesting things. She makes really, really fabulously bold garments for herself. She is a fabulously bold human being. The way that she presents herself is fabulously bold. And I enjoy that and I appreciate that. Our aesthetics are really completely different, but I love her aesthetic. And I love her play with color. And recently she's really been going bonkers and had a couple of sweaters that are color blocking and different things that were really tempting. I would never wear the sweater that she's wearing, but I love the playfulness of it. I love I don't know, there's something about it that I found really entrancing. So that was another big nod of inspiration. And when I was looking at colors to choose or considering the thing I ended up finding, in a way, she gave me permission. She obviously didn't. I don't know her, but that was what I was using as well. If this kind of thing works for her, maybe I can make it work for me in my own sort of spin on this. So those were my two very big inspirations for the thing that... I'll give you one hint, because I don't spin, as we have established. I don't spin my own yarn. So if I want to make a sweater with hand spun, or something that has the appearance of hand spun, I'd only really have one commercial option, don't I? And that's the one that I used. And I might have gone a little crazy in my color choices. Or it might work. I still don't know. I have cast it on. I have been working on it. I wanted to film this like a week ago, but it's been raining and or no light, and so the little, fill light that I use to make sure you can actually see the things I hold up at you would not have done enough. So that's my adventure to come. And I think that's everything that I have at the moment. I don't know. Do you even think about color? Is color a thing that you explore? Have you learned lessons that you can share with us? Do you not care and just pick colors and it always works? And if so, tell us so we can go check out your Ravelry page and see. I don't know. I am very curious to see and hear everybody's thoughts in the world of color, because it's a whole universe. It's a thing. And it's a thing I'm going to be playing with for a while. Right. Thank you so much for watching. It's been a pleasure to hang out with you for a bit, and I'll see you later.